today talking about this thing called Bugwood. It's one of those things that you kind of wonder how these programs start up and how they get going, and the misconceptions that come out when someone says, oh, Bugwood, I bet they just work on bugs and wood. No. At the time, it was a great name. But the more official name at this point has been the Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health. And that long of a name, you understand why we call it Bugwood, because that's an entire breath just to say the name. The group started, I was not here at the start of it. I am not that old, although I may be seasoned. Started in 1979. Keith Daus published in the Journal of Extension this paper on a blue sky perspective, that we have these computers that people are getting in their homes. And we've got, floppy disks that can hold like 720 kilobytes, massive amounts of data. As this technology increases and as it becomes more widely used, he was kind of saying, look, this is going to be a thing. It's only going to get better. So land-grant universities, you really need to be at the forefront of this. You need to make sure we know how to use the technology. We know how to get extension personnel on it. We know how to update this information. We need to be a leader in this space. Not only because it's going to make our jobs easier to do, but it also is going to help us continue to be that source of truth for the public and make sure that our credibility with the public stays where it's always been, on top. That land-grant universities present the best non-biased information to all partners and help enable innovation and success in all areas. So taking this idea that Dr. Daus put out in '79, it took a little while. That in 1995, about 16 years later, you had the official start of this group with Dr. Daus, Keith Daus, who is an entomologist, and Dave Moorhead, who's a forester, bug, wood, started a program to use information technology to better get information out. They're both extension specialists at the University of Georgia. Fine, let's really focus on bringing personnel together to use technology to the best benefits. The original name for the group was the Entomology and Forest Resource Digital Information Work Group. Again, another really long name, but Bugwood Network was easier to say and stuck. And that's where it became a center then in 2008, that they had kept these programs going, and they were looking towards the future and saying, at some point, we're going to retire. We think we built some good things here. It would be great for that to live on beyond us. So how do we provide for the sustainability of these programs and make sure that it continues on beyond even the careers of the people who started it? That was officially formed in 2008, and then in 2014 expanded to include some graduate research and teaching, because prior to that, being them both extension specialists, it was outreach. It was pure outreach and extension. This has continued to evolve since 2008, with the latest advisory council being formed in 2015, and a new strategic plan, again, releasing that 5-year cycle we all love. As much as we love doing strategic plans, coming back, seeing how that's been going and getting the next one out. The strategic planning process has helped us several times in really focusing on what is it that we do? What do we focus on that makes us unique that we're going to pursue? And we've my elevator speech for it is, we do partnerships to help implement technology. We do technology so biologists don't have to. There's a lot of tools that have already been built. How do we make them sustainable? How do we bring the best technology to any given problem? That's what our group does. We help people to understand, people's problems, work with our partners, because we are not going to cover every aspect of it. We're just an enabler behind the scenes to help what they want to do get done, frequently using information technology. And in looking at the center, I structured this one kind of where Roger was aiming in the beginning description of, well, what is it that the center does? Because we were doing products and projects long before we were a center. So how do you end up putting a center structure around what you're already doing? How do you make it inclusive to have everything there? So starting off with what we were doing even before this, we had our content systems. Most of you know the image database, a lot of images that you could use, but then it expanded out for presentations, video, and other resources. Keep in mind, the home of this was extension specialists. What are they always doing? They're trying to get information out to growers, other stakeholders, and share information with other extension specialists. So each of these content systems was built along the lines of, well, we've got something now to store images and get that out. Well, what else are we working with all the time? Presentations, videos. So it was following the needs of the extension specialists and the next thing they wanted to be able to hold and work with. Bugwood images, 322,000 images, freely available for non-commercial use. Here's the kicker, as long as you cite them. If you're not charging for the end product, you're trying to educate people, here, give credit where credit is due. Here are images you can use. And from the image database, there's 5 websites that most people go to for that. Why do we have different websites? Because forestry images really focuses on foresters and people working in forest health. If I say to the forest health people, hey, would you go to the IPM website? Some of them might, but a lot of them go, I don't know that that's for me. I don't know that I would find that. Same with the IPM images. If I'm working in cotton, or if I'm working in vegetables, would I really go to, I wouldn't go to forestry images. That would just be odd fit. So it's different interfaces tailored to different audiences, but coming off the same database of information. And with that, you've got this basic functionality. Here is some way you've gotten into it to see a bunch of pictures. You can scroll down and see all these pictures that have been provided by different contributors. We do not own the photos. They still maintain their copyright. We're just the platform serving it out. And in partnership with them, we've added all kinds of information onto these photos. For, am I looking at insects or plants or life stages, or what is it that you're filtering these images by? We make all of that available for someone to tailor down and find what they're looking for. And this gets to some of the flexibility of what we can do, that in the case I was showing here, I'm coming in under a commodity, but there's other times I'm going to come in starting from a state, or I'm going to come in starting from a subject of yellow-legged hornet. All right, that's my starting point. Now, how do I see the different commodities and things this is affecting and pictures of it actually being used? This also maintained a focus on, we're not trying to get 30,000 images of spongy moth. We're trying to get the best representative photos to cover that species. So I may have 30 pictures of adults at different angles and male and female. I may have 40 different pictures of larvae that I've got a landscape view and a portrait view and close-ups, but it's providing that resource that if I'm putting together an extension presentation, I have what I need to move forward. If I'm putting together a website, I have the pictures I need to get that done. I know that I can use them, and I know how to cite them. All that is clearly provided. So really, again, from that background of an extension specialist, here are resources to be used in outreach. Go and give credit where credit's due. It took a little while, but then it expanded out. Bugwood Presents. Here are full-fledged PowerPoint presentations that specialists have put together. If you want a presentation on Spider, you could go make your own and look up that information, or you can come to Bugwood Presents, find one that works, download it, and then after giving the presentation, make sure you cite, hey, thank you to Rebecca Wallace for putting this presentation together and providing materials. Something pretty simple to help just share information in a little different format. One of the fun things about this, each of the presentations you can view online just by clicking through like a slideshow. And if I, as the owner of that presentation, wanted to replace it, I just upload a new version, and anywhere that someone's embedded it, you now have the most recent copy of that presentation. So we're not having to track down and put the same file in multiple locations. Here it is, you're ready to go. And it updates automatically. We then took steps into the world of video. And I can hear someone in the audience going, video? Have you heard of this thing called YouTube? They got a couple of videos there. Maybe this was based on, well, if I'm making my own videos and I don't have pictures of hairy crazy ants, I don't have video footage of that. Can I borrow someone else's B-roll footage to work on my production? Why, yes, you can. You can go here, download the original copies of it, produce your own videos, cite where you got that footage, where if you were trying to do that through YouTube, that gets to be a little tricky. Again, focusing on extension specialists, here are resources for you to build out other products to help inform people. And then the newest of these, the resource database, we had images, presentations, and video covered, and they each have their way we want to display them online. Resources got to the point of people saying, I have a list of fact sheets or best management guidelines or whatever else. How do I get that list and keep it together and work with different groups? So with that expansion to other content types, it kept coming back to what our extension partners were looking for. I want to put a list of resources on my website. I'd like an image gallery. Can you tell me if it's invasive? Can you give me a map of that? We started setting it up that people can go in and make their own collections of content. You could pull straight off the fire hose that is the database of everything and 322,000 things, or you can custom curate a collection of content that you wish to have served out to your audience on your website. And this is how you make that work. You can select that content for your project. You're set up in your own space where you can select all of that. If you ever add something, wherever you've embedded that content, it updates automatically. And when there's new content, you get notified. So you're not always having to log back in and check to see if the count of images have changed and really hoping there's new content. No, how do we put it right in front of you? And some of the development we're working on right now is to get it to be one click easy. I get an email saying, hey, there's new content. I see some previews of it. I click it, add it to a collection, and I'm done. Really just trying to streamline that process of people listing when content has been made available and get it added to other partners that are wanting to be able to use that. It's just easier maintenance for outreach sites, easier pulling together of different pieces of material, and increasing the speed that we can share resources and increase how widely they're shared. With this, it's great that we have our silo. Our silo is pretty darn porous. A lot of things go out. Open up access. There is no reason for me to keep people out of any of this. There is an application programming interface. We encourage people, if you want to write your own application, pulling off any of these systems, go ahead. As long as you're not charging for the end product, we're in good shape. Give credit where credit is due. Help us get this information out. And coming soon, thanks to some money from PPA, we've got a WordPress plugin, a Drupal plugin coming out that taps into these same APIs to be able to moderate collections, pull content, and display it on a web page. Just about every working group I get involved with says, I want a website. I want a list of this. I want a list of that. Okay, this is just making our lives easier, that I'm not hand coding anything and keeping it behind this mysterious veil of a programmer has to be engaged. Here are interfaces that make that easy for people to actually use this. And for those geeks out there that like doing their own programming, here's some code examples. If you're interested to see how to use this better, all right, here's some examples of how we've done it. And I'm optimistic that one day I will get someone sending me back code examples saying, I liked yours. Here's what we did. And having more of that discussion. I love the interaction we get with people who are using the resources. So all this content, you keep seeing this theme of the extension specialist going, what do I need next? That actually led us into Edmaps. We had all this content. We had lists of resource. We had all that. But if I look at the USDA plants database and their distribution of where privet was, and I look at what Georgia Forestry Commission has, and I look what other groups have, they were all telling a different picture. So Edmaps was set up to be a data aggregator, to work with all these partners, pull it together and have a clear picture of where we're all saying it is. And in some cases, actually raise some interesting questions of, well, you guys are saying it's here, you're saying it's here, and this is a odd outlier out here. Can we check to see what the source of that data was and get some validation on that? It started with the aggregation, but then as it kept going and we were looking at how do you do effective early detection and rapid response programs, the tool set kept expanding out. It got into questions of, all right, if we're doing detections, if something's reported, who needs to get that? Is it a regulatory pest, which means the state plant regulatory official and the state plant health director need to be absolutely included? Or is it something that, okay, someone's tracking corn earworm again? The specialists need to be engaged in those discussions, but we don't need to go through some of the regulatory protections that normally would be there. You start working then across between US and Canada, you bring in the tribes in the US, Native American lands, and you go, well, how do I make sure I'm respecting those jurisdictions and pull it all in? And how do we do validation of the data as it comes through? And what response options are available? This is where Edmaps has continued to evolve and include more of these functionalities. And in the vast majority of cases, not saying we are the system that rules all, because we're not. We are one partner in a larger ecosystem of data. We need to work with all these people. There are people who have built great apps for collecting data in different contexts, and they all have wonderful purposes. How do we work alongside you as opposed to it being a competitive relationship? Towards that aggregation, one of our main aspects has been, well, there are times where we know a lot of the biologists we work with, they've got their data in Excel or a database that never is going to see the light of day. And if they retire, where'd all that data go? There was a lot of money invested in getting that data out there. And while I applaud some of the efforts to say, well, here, just put it here, when that data hasn't been through quality control and quality assurance, when it hasn't been brought to a standard, it makes it very difficult to find that these data sets exist, know how you can even access them. They aren't necessarily interoperable because different people use different data standards, and reusable, I don't know what the data license is. So we spend a lot of time trying to make the data fair so that it can be reused. We got into the world of smartphone apps with many different folks saying, I need an app for my project. So here's all the apps we're building out based on what the purpose was. In a lot of cases, it was about some ego, some identity, but it was all coming back to the same systems, sharing data behind the scenes. As soon as we started getting all enough data together, we started getting folks saying, all right, that's great. I have active management programs in Utah. We're going to manage these weeds. There are dollars going to this every single year. How do I know where to target my treatments? And when I actually do the treatments, how do I follow up so I have records of what's been done? And I can show that because you've been funding this, we've gone from this amount of infestation to this, to maybe the problem's been fully managed. Providing different tools for different audiences so that they can manage the information and make better use of it. That's expanded out into some different ways. Again, kind of like the image systems. I can't get a person in cotton to go to forestry images. Edmaps can be a bit intimidating as a name. Wild Spotter, mapping invasives in America's wild places. A much more streamlined app for those hunters, fishers, campers to report when they see something and allow the forests or the parks or the other natural areas to focus the attention of their visitors on areas they really want data. So purpose-driven applications, looking at where they want to go next. And then Ag Pest Monitor. Ag is its own world. The pests don't necessarily care if they're in a natural area versus your ag field. So how do we transition those worlds? And here's a set of tools just for the ag professionals. So Edmaps came along, and there's a lot of functionality there for reporting, validating data, visualizing it, and letting people pull the data back out to make their own products, because it's about sharing that data and helping everybody get along. The last area that we focused a lot on is outreach. And yes, we do outreach of, some of you have heard of the yellow-legged hornet. We're building fact sheets, we're doing talks, we're doing other things in state. But most of the time when I talk outreach, it's about technology implementation. Technology is the thing that people go, I know it's a thing. I want an app. Why do you want an app? Because it's an app. Oh, okay. Appreciate that perspective. What are you going to do with it? How is this all going to work together, and getting them to work through that? So we spend a lot of time starting off at the beginning of the design process. What are you trying to do? What is your goal for this application? What work are you trying to get done? We then take that back to our development teams and we whiteboard it, draw it out, wireframe it, and say, all right, here's, based on what they're trying to do, here's how we think we can make that work well. We then start getting into the app development, producing the alpha and beta versions of this, making sure it's working and covering the needs they have, and having a pilot group to help us tailor that as we're working through it. We then prepare for the launch of whatever it is, be it a clearinghouse website or an app for reporting or whatever it is, making sure that everything is ready to go under the hood. And then actually going back with the partners, doing the training. This is sometimes just to train the trainer. Sometimes it's actually going out and training and working with growers or land managers or other officials. This has led to a lot of projects for us. This is just website hosting. The number of websites, we're actually up to about 105 at this point. A lot of those are very simple, 5-6 page websites talking about a group and what they're doing. Some of those are Edmaps, which is way more in depth, but providing this experience for folks that we come back every year to revise and look at what they're doing. So it was kind of in this environment we were looking at, all right, how do you go from this, all these things you do? You're a center at the University of Georgia. You're going to do strategic analysis. You're going to do your SWOT, because everyone loves a good SWOT. How are you going to wrap this around what your programs are and use that to actually lead your programs? For us, we doubled down on what we do best. Reading through this vision of what we want, we're supporting efforts. We're helping implement solutions. We're working with partners. It's all about extension and outreach. We do have some research and some teaching on the side of what we do, but outreach is our main goal. We are enablers, helping these solutions to be out there. And so for our mission, how do we develop and utilize partnerships and information technology to advance invasive species management, integrated pest management, and forest health? Technology without people is worthless. You have to have the on-the-ground programs, the people engaged in it. And they have to have good technology that makes their job easier and not something that can sometimes be a frustration and make them want to hurl it across the room. So with this vision and mission that we spent a lot of time working on, it got to our strategic plan. And this is what we ended up with. That's funny. Thinks it's part of my background.
No.
It's the way that goes. A lovely one-page handout describing what we do. And in focusing on these strategic areas, getting to things that were specific, measurable, achievable, reportable, and time-based. We needed to know that we could actually report back on these. So in breaking all this out, we're starting with promoting and publicizing to improve the awareness of the programs. When our advisory council met, the biggest thing we kept hearing, you are one of the best kept secrets. It's like, well, that
I know, right? I'm so tired of hearing that.
yeah, how do we work that? So, all right, how are we going to work within the university itself, within the state, and both nationally and internationally to raise awareness of our programs? Well, we need to get our annual reports, impact statements, newsletters, press releases. We need to do a whole lot more of this. We spent way too much time, well, it was needed, getting the products right, working with the partners. We don't spend enough time tooting our own horn and promoting not only what we're doing, but our partners and our interaction, because that's so critical to what we do. So we're actually been hiring communicators to help bring this on and do more with this. We are still going to up our game for providing training for agriculture and natural resources. This is mainly within the state, but we occasionally do it outside because we still do have a responsibility, University of Georgia, and some of the things we build for the state of Georgia work elsewhere. We continue to collaborate and engage with the UGA commodity teams. They're the people working with the growers. I am the wind beneath their wings. I am supporting them. I am helping them move forward, but it's unlikely I'm going to be working with the growers in a lot of cases. I have to go through the specialists to make this happen. We also take the time to make sure we have training and educational materials and updates for stakeholders. It helps when they know what is new in Georgia, just as much as it helps to know what new functionality has been released and who's working on what projects. We've actually had some good success with the trainings that we've been providing to different places, and it's always great to see that when we have success. The first report of Northern Giant Hornet came in through the Washington State Invasives app, which we built, which is tied into Edmaps, just under a different guise. And then it leads into their management programs and the other things they're working on. So these are some of the places when we're starting to, well, was that successful? Did your trainings go anywhere? Well, yes, because we did trainings, this is the result, the actual impact that we're seeing. We still make an effort to reach out to folks. We frequently act in the middle of many different groups, providing fact sheets that are branded across all organizations, because when Asian longhorn beetle comes in, it's going to affect everybody, not just one group. So how do we work and collaborate better with those state agencies? That does also mean talking about everyone else in the room. There are plenty of nonprofits, committees, and boards that we need to engage with. They're all trying to help towards some of the same goals of stopping invasives from coming in, encouraging other habitats to stay where they're at. How do we engage with them to know what they're doing and make sure they're looped into everyone else's programs? We have a specific item in our strategic plan of making sure that the invasive species task force in Georgia is still moving forward, and we keep that collaboration between these agencies going through. Other states have other agencies. We occasionally do comment on that, but this really for Georgia and our value to the state of Georgia is where we have a fair amount of impact. And then participating much more broadly, be it trade shows, be it different forums, professional societies, make sure we're active in those groups. That's not only the promotion of our programs, but also learning what other people are doing. Again, we are not the source of everything. There's partnerships, there's collaborations, and there's people that have built wonderful tools that we love to partner with, because both sides end up benefiting from it in the end. We do look to influence policy and development of programs. There are a lot of folks that are trying to put policy out or develop a program, and they may not be aware of the best kept secrets or the latest information that has come out. So how do we mobilize that information, participate in those groups, and move things forward? So we're going to serve on national councils, committees, grant panels to be more aware and also help bring the information we have to the table. And the list of groups we have both on the invasive species side, which is more natural area, and the IPM side with the Federal IPM Coordinating Committee, National IPM Coordinating Committee, just being engaged in these groups to see where we have to go and what we need to do next. Participating in the development of standards. Biologists really aren't big fans of having to come up with standards for data exchange. So groups that actually do that, it's nice to have them in the room to have those discussions and say, all right, well, here's the practical approach to a data standard. And knowing that that works back and forth from here's the standard in theory, and then here's the standard in practice. Because we work with all these different data sources trying to make sure that information comes into Edmaps as we aggregate. And so we frequently do quality control and assessment with those folks saying, all right, you've got this. Are you following the NASMA standard for this? Or is that coming from somewhere else? And maybe the NASMA standard didn't cover a piece that you're really interested in. All right, well, then let's change standard. Let's get the next revision out to bring that into a practical application. We do work to be involved in development of Farm Bill and other federal programs. Whenever there's comment periods, whenever people are asking what direction things should go, we make sure to comment, to be heard, to provide an input of, well, this is where we know programs to be and who we know have what issues. How do we put that forward to make sure that it's well represented? And our partners frequently appreciate this because they may not have the time to be writing that comment into NIFA's listening session or elsewhere. So we help to provide that translation from all of our groups. Talking about translation of stuff, white papers. We sometimes wonder where these go. You've had a working group together for a long time. So the Western Governors Association wanted to get to the point of having invasive species data management workshops because they're trying to pull all this data together. So what can we do to make that move forward? And talking with them both from the data side and our experience with people on the ground, we provide that translation in many different venues. One of the things we wrote in, leveraging our connections with the Southern IPM Center. Anyone who's at NC State, definitely if you're at CIPM, you know the Southern IPM Center. Southern IPM Center has been based out of NC State for a very long time. A great program providing a lot of resources needed for extension, outreach, and even starting off some of that applied research and those other programs. We got involved with the Southern IPM Center long time ago, 2005. We started submitting to the Southern Region IPM program for different projects we wanted to do. And that continued in 2007 with a wiki, and then working on the image database, and then doing more work with those resources for diagnosticians, and then a technology working group, and then doing smartphone apps. We kept applying to the Southern IPM Center grant program. And eventually Jim Van Kirk, who was the director of the IPM Center at the time, said, we love you guys to death. You keep applying, we keep funding you. It always tends to be in these very niche areas where you manage to get a project and enough people together. That's great. How about we just bring you on as part of the leadership for the Southern IPM Center? Because that could let you actually range a little more and do something that's a little more applicable to wider groups than these one-year projects that are great, but aren't necessarily getting to their full extent. So in 2013, he brought me on as an assistant director for the Southern IPM Center to see how we could work together more. To where we are now, here's the staff of the Southern IPM Center. Dinesha Seth Carley, your director for CIPM, is still a co-PI on the grant. Roger's handling a lot of the day-to-day stuff as another co-PI, really, handling where we're taking programs and doing the development. And it's been great having the interaction between CIPM, the folks there, and our group here at Bugwood. We've done a lot of things to move things back and forth. And it really is where we see a large portion of our success, having that relationship moving forward. We're going to continue to coordinate and develop the use of information and tools. There's a lot that's been built. How do we make sure that it's available for use and put it all out there? How do I get people to be aware the programs exist, get them training on it? And because we do work with technology, there are other services such as Basecamp, MailChimp, webinar hosting, website. We're not hosting those applications, but we're well-versed in doing it. Helping biologists use technology. We do a lot of work with working groups, just helping facilitate them getting their message out on shoestring budgets where they've got their time, maybe a little bit of money for a graduate student, maybe some for travel. How do we help leverage that as far as it can? We're enabling rapid information exchange when there are new and emerging pests. The IPM pipe projects, iPipe, other national pest monitoring programs, those over time have become part of Edmaps. It is the database and platform behind them. They're built, they're ready to go. How do I make sure people know it's here? If you want to start tracking something tomorrow, it takes me a few minutes to set you up, get you going, maybe about half hour to get you trained so you know what everything is. And you understand data confidentiality, privacy, data verification. You know how to move forward. We've worked many of these things out. Here, how do I get you started and moving forward with this? Utilizing the expertise that the other staff who aren't based at University of Georgia have. The communication, Kayla Watson, who many of you are familiar with. The evaluation with Tegan Walker. This is back when Jean-Jacques was the evaluator for the Southern IPM Center. There's a lot that we can do talking back and forth and saying, all right, well, I know there's a group here. What can we do as the Southern IPM Center to support them? And is there room to grow that into something more? That's actually led to sometimes where we share some staff and resources to support the mission of both organizations. IPM Data, been working with Robin for years on, well, what are you guys doing? Well, here's information that we've got over here. Here's a mapping engine. Here, how do I make sure you can use that and integrate it into your application so you don't have to go rebuild it? And anytime that we do upgrades to it, you've got that. How do we link more information back and forth? In more recent times, that's actually led to where people have come to us for a specialty crop research initiative grant or something else. And they've said, we want to do the mapping and stuff like that. And we also want to do evaluation of these programs. Well, Southern IPM Center gives advice on evaluation through Tegan. And she gives advice on how they should structure things and everything else. But to actually implement it, they really need to put some dollars in their grant to fund Tegan at NCSU to do that work, or find another evaluator to work with them. Either way, how do we move that forward? So it's been a really great collaboration, seeing where our strengths are, what's available, and how do we leverage that, not only for our own programs, but to support any program in the nation. Getting into other aspects of it, our infrastructure, we can never ignore that as part of our strategic plan. It's needed. We want to make sure we have a way to look at our infrastructure and know how we're accessing our programs. Know that we have good ways to actually get back metrics so people know where the resources are going to. Make sure we have a good facility. This is something that often flies under the radar. You need a building for your people. We have 14 folks at Bugwood. They need an office. They need a place to be. We are not remote because at Georgia, we are not remote. It's how we work. So how do we make sure those facilities are kept up to date? How do we make sure we retain our staff? We don't tend to use a whole lot of students or graduate students. We tend to do a whole lot more with staff. It provides better sustainability and continuity for some of the applications that we work with. So how do we recruit new individuals that will be long-term members of our team? How do we retain those that are here? Always a challenge for any organization. How do we also look to see where we need help on promotion? We are currently hiring someone for marketing and public relations. We're actually looking to hire a second person to be their assistant. Providing with that promotion and not being the best kept secret, we really need to dedicate some resources into that and find a way to do more with it. And find strategies to better keep engaged with our stakeholders and hopefully lead to long-term funding. If you're providing service, normally that gets recognized and the people will make sure resources are available for you to do things. So it's where we're engaged a lot with our folks in Georgia and in other places. Make sure we stay engaged with our advisory council. This is the group that met back in 2016 that got our strategic plan to where it is. And some of you who know people know that Herb Bolton and others have retired. Yes, keeping this up to date, adding additional people in and building it to keep in touch with what programs are going on. Or we can do a better job of this, but our advisory council does act to help keep us in line and know where we need to go and where we might want to focus. That also goes to even advisory councils for our programs, that for Edmaps, there are regional planning sessions for that particular application. That's in addition to our advisory council we have for the center overall, because sometimes the pieces that we work with are just too big to be in one piece. We are still trying to figure out, and if you guys ever figure out this answer, how to affiliate or adjunct faculty to your center, what's the benefit to them? How does that work out? We're still working on this. It keeps coming back up. We keep getting told you're nice people, but do I have to do anything more as an adjunct or affiliate? What does that mean aside from a line on my CV? As mentioned before, continuing to produce those annual reports so people know what infrastructure we have, what our needs are, and how it's being used. And evaluating all of our new projects based on, well, does it fit with our core mission? There are plenty of projects we've been asked for of, oh, I need an app. Or what do you want to do? Poultry ventilator calculator, poultry ventilation calculator. Okay, kind of tangentially related to a lot of things we do. Could we technically do it? Sure. Is it going to be a one-off that we're going to have to maintain? Possibly without funding. Possibly. So working with partners, and in some cases, we've had good real options of, we don't tend to do a whole lot of modeling in our group. So got modelers, they need data, clean data, here. Partner with us, work with it. We had a great relationship with Jenica Allen and Bethany Bradley working on climate change in the Northeast. They did all these great analyses. And when they got done with our shiny stuff they brought back to us, we took that and turned it into something that I could actually host on a server for less than it cost me for Starbucks. Because they did all the research, we then applied it and tried to put it into a production setting where I don't have to worry about some of that infrastructure. So we love having partners. Partners are key to what we do. And we are looking at life cycles for all of our products. So we know when something may have gotten to end of life and the group's disbanded. Is this really of any use? At some point, resources do need to go away. We are still working to get consistent branding across a lot of our things. For many of our websites that have been refreshed, they do have a consistent look and feel to them. And our university has helped us now, moving from the old logos we used to have, which were a little more Georgia and University of Georgia agnostic, to definitely representing that we are University of Georgia and pulling that branding together. That has led to some interesting conversations because branding works for all groups. This is where multiple groups said, oh, this is the branding we need for our app. But then they found it led to confusion because Seedon, Southeast early detection and Mid-Atlantic early detection. What if I'm in Virginia? Which app do I use? A lot of people got confused. It's where some of those discussions led to just tell them to use Edmaps and we're done. Same functionalities there. How do we move forward with that? And we are working to make sure that part of not being the best kept secret is making sure that we are getting credit where credit is due on publications, presentations, and other grants. So having a written policy for what that is. Last piece, the part no one ever likes to talk about, money. This is part of our strategic plan. We need to have funds to get this mission to succeed. We continue to make sure we have a diverse funding portfolio. We have to have funding from multiple different groups because if one of those programs were to get cut, it would be really bad for our 14 staff. So how do we make sure our portfolio is diverse so that things change, we still have a good program? Also looking at how much we're balanced between hard funds, which is about 2.8 FTEs out of our 14 FTEs we have on staff. How do we make sure we're balancing the internal and external funding? How to make sure we have partners engaged so that if there are opportunities, we are in position to work with them and do it well. And this is an area we're actually looking at quite a bit, increasing our annual giving. We've done very little appeal for it's end of the year. We do great things. Could you please consider donating to the center to help support our activities? So this is an area where we're looking for a lot of growth in the coming year. We are continuing to maintain our server and database infrastructure. For those that I am giving nervous twitches to, because you see that picture on the right, we are no longer in a closet on the experiment station. We moved to Amazon a while ago because we needed to have dependable server infrastructure that I could rely on. Whether a hurricane's coming through, tornado, I need to know my systems are up and running and available for use. It took us from, this is that red section you see there, that's where we were tracking outages, where we were in that closet and things were not necessarily going so well, re-engineering a lot of that. And when we got up to Amazon, now very few outages in any given time period. If I'm talking early detection and rapid response or delivering outreach materials, I have one shot to get that person engaged and give them information. I cannot afford for them to say, oh, come back later when the server's back up. For us, that is not an option. So Amazon has helped us greatly with getting that reliability. And then looking to see, can we get more state support for what we're doing for our operating budget, so we can be more active in programs that require matching funds and Georgia programming. So a bit of a journey going from all these different products, all these things that we do, and then we wrapped, all right, well, this is what the center does. And this is how we're going to make the center sustainable for the next 10, 15, 20 years and keep things moving in a good direction. I went a little over what Roger asked me for, but we still have time for questions. And if you don't ask any, you can always email me.
All right, thank you very much, Joe. Looks like we're going to have our director ask the first question.
Oh, okay. I'll ask the first. I do have a question, but I like to let other people talk because you guys know I can talk too much. Joe, you covered this a little bit, but I'd like you to expand a little bit. And I don't want to take up all the rest of the airtime, so answer accordingly. You and I can always circle back. But essentially, first of all, thank you. I always enjoy hearing what you have to say. Of course, I am very familiar with you, your program, and Bugwood, and I always learn something new. So thanks so much for joining us today. I wish you were in person, so feel free to join us in person next time. You know, we are entering sort of a strategic planning period for CIPM. We've been around a long time. We hear the same thing that you hear. Oh, you're the best kept secret at NC State, right? And we all get tired of hearing that. And I guess essentially I wanted to know, in terms of Bugwood, because you guys have been around a long time as well, what's worked for you to get your message out and what hasn't worked? And you can speak in really short bullet points. And then again, I don't want to take all the airtime because we could finish this hour with that answer, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'll say I have a long list of things that haven't worked.
Maybe send it to me. I would
trying having communications as I have my project and oh yes, I need to do center awareness has never worked. No matter how we've tried to frame that, structure it, and do it. It's why the #1 request I've had up to my administration, we need hard dollars to either take the director's salaries off of grants so they can be freed up to do some of that promotion, or I need to have some hard dollars for a communicator for the center.
Yes, hallelujah.
And that's, we finally have enough funds, that communication and marketing position. They are a communication and marketing director for our center. Half of their time is center promotion funded through where we have managed to get enough resources to support them for at least the next 18 months.
Yeah.
That was a lot of squirreling and fundraising and getting to that point. And we are hoping that, I'll tell you in 18 months if it worked, if their efforts are going to lead to additional donations and contributions to help reinforce that, and that it needs to be its own thing. It can't be part of another project. It doesn't work.
I 100% agree. Yeah, thank you for that. You essentially underscored everything I already have seen here, because we also don't have a dedicated person for CIPM. And just to put in a short plug for Kayla, you see how amazing she is with the Southern IPM Center. We need something equally for our overarching center. So thank you, especially to Kayla.
Well, thank you, Denisha.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Denisha. Our next question comes from Tom, who is our professional question asker. He's always great to get the question started. Thank you, Tom.
Hey, thanks for the introduction, Roger. First of all, Joe, great presentation. I really appreciate your optimism, enthusiasm. So I do have a question in terms of the sharing of the data, right? You have so many different partners, from private to government to, NGOs, all kinds of partners. And I know sometimes data is proprietary. Have you run into any challenges in terms of, everybody just get along and share? And I understand like that can be a challenge. And how have you addressed that challenge if that is the case?
We get that challenge all the time. I fight that challenge on a daily basis. How I fight that challenge? Education. Here's what this does. A lot of listening, sitting down with them and what are your concerns about this? Tegan has taught me to be comfortable with silence. Let them talk. Listen, actively listen to what they're saying. Don't be composing your answer to what they're doing. And then take that back and say, all right, I understand. I maybe poke a little bit and get to what their concerns are. And then, all right, can we work through some ways we could address it? Frequently, how those strategies for addressing it, we provide the range of options from it is locked down. The only person in our system that can see it is you. And it's up to you to push the button that releases it past anywhere else. All the way to a range of options in security for, no, here it is, it's available. Here's, if you're going to use it, here's how you cite it. And here's how you do this. And it's a constantly evolving process. It's led to some new discussions that we've had just on providing templates for data use policies, providing here's examples of other groups that have done it, showing those success stories so that someone's not going, it just seems so big. I don't know how to get through this. And I appreciate the words that are coming out of your mouth, that every third word is blah, 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 blah. Oh, here's a practical example. I can see myself in the position of the corn disease working group. I have the same concerns about being scooped about my research data being published before I've actually published on it. So how did they address it? It's one of those areas I actually am looking forward to our communicator writing specific use case stories to promote not only what we do, but the functionality and how we've addressed these issues. And where any one program, that communicator is going to be vital to moving some of this forward.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
Final question for this session comes from our Assistant Director, Gudgeon. Gudgeon, do you have a question still?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So could you tell us a little about how you selected the advisory council and how that has helped the center?
How we selected what?
Your advisory council, like external or internal advisory council for the center.
It was looking at where we had active partnerships. Also looking at the broader landscape of, well, we know that if we're dealing with invasives, we're going to be dealing with departments of agriculture. So do you have a Department of Agriculture on your advisory council? Just kind of doing a survey through to see what different perspectives are out there, crossing that with who you can realistically get. And are there some people that wear multiple hats so they can cover multiple different roles? I think that's the fourth or fifth one that we've done for different groups, and it's always a challenge, but it's a good process to see who else needs to be engaged in this conversation.